Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Modern Aikido's podcast. Been a little bit again. Life's been pretty busy, but I wanted to get something out to you. And that is, I want to talk a little bit about how we train with different clothing. A lot of us don't do this. We usually get into our gi. Sometimes they're hakama. If you wear hakama, some people do, some people don't. But we get used to this training attire, and that usually is bare feet. Uh, what I want to do is introduce the idea, or maybe remind you, or put it in your head. Try to use different clothing sometimes, um, and that is we often will use things like grabs and hooks, to try to move limbs and things like that, which is great because the people are, the limb is going to be an arm or something is going to be much easier to catch reliably because you know what it consists of. Whereas grabbing a pant leg, of course, in gi pants, we can grab a pant leg and pull on it and move the leg, which is basically why one of the reasons I consider Aikido a grappling art, because grabs are legitimate, and they go back to Daido-ryu Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, where thankfully the Japanese clothing was very consistent back in the day, and one of the big things was the back of the collar on the kimono, and the same thing holds for the gi. It kind of stands out from the neck. Oftentimes, since we use judo gis and heavy duty gis, they're thick, so they're like a big handle. They're easy to grab, and you can kind of pull them around. But garments work a lot differently, and so different garments do. So I would encourage you, go down to a local Goodwill or some kind of a thrift shop, or get some used clothing, or save some old T-shirts, some old hoodies, jackets, different types of jackets, whether they're closed front, zipped up, or they're open. What you'll find as you start to grab and maneuver, move somebody's body, which is just kazushi, taking their posture. What you'll find is that some garments are very easy to grab, some are a little bit more difficult to grab, some are very weak and will just rip. Others are strong. What I found, for example, with T-shirts, is that while they tend to be very light and loose often, the collars are very, very hard to rip. You can stretch them, but if you grab a collar and you pull on it, it's the shirt's just not going to shred. And of course, try these things out in kind of in live fire as you're starting to pull somebody around, and you get used to how they work. The same, one of the things you can also do, because shirts will start to, you'll hear fabric start to crack and pop, but it won't just separate. But sometimes, like, the fabric part will. So if you grab on and you pull, it might rip away from the collar. It pays to get used to these things, because these are variables in a real world situation where you might have to grab somebody. Police will often do this. They'll grab the sleeve of a jacket or of a shirt and they'll pull it. And it's rather hard to get out of. It's not impossible, but it's a great way to affect somebody, to control their limb. And it's good to get used to that. Try working with oversized hoodies. One of my favorite things, and this is very, very common in street altercations, is to blind somebody. Grab their shirt, pull it up over their head, and then down in front of their face, so they're basically covered. Now, with a hoodie, this is very easy to do. But if the hoodie's really oversized, they can raise their arms and they'll just pull right out of it. But blinding somebody is a tremendous advantage. They might start swinging, but they're going to be swinging blind. So if you can grab and pull the shirt or hoodie or jacket over their face and then shift aside, chances are you can see everything that's going on and they can't see. On top of that, if you pull down, just like straight down in front of the chest, you will often bend them over like a drop, what they call it, a drop down. And so again, that's taking posture. These are all tremendous advantage things. So one of the things we did back in the day was because pulling on garments, you will start to tear them, especially light T-shirts. Hoodies are more durable, but you can go get old, like, hockey jerseys from high schools, and you can use those, and you can pull on those all the time and pull on them hard and they won't rip. They're made to be very, very durable. So, and they're cheap. You can go get them used for just a few bucks. But get used to what it's like to grab somebody and manipulate them by their garments, but also what it's like to have your garment grabbed. And I know that in jujitsu and a number of different arts, there's some great gi chokes, because the gi comes down on a V on the other side of the neck, and you can reach in and grab, and you can kind of do a neck choke crank. Fantastic. Try that on a jacket. Try it on a jean jacket, or on a fall jacket or winter jacket. Try it on the stuff that people wear commonly. See how it works. And another one of my favorites is to grab a garment and then twist it. What I found is that almost every garment, shirt, jacket, hoodie, sweatshirt, whatever, when you get it across the chest, especially under the armpits, it's now, like with this shirt, it's pretty loose, but if you can grab it and start to twist it, all this tightens up. So now, if you, depending on how oversized their garment is, or if it's fairly well fitted to them, not ridiculously oversized, you grab and twist that, you're pretty much grabbing a handle for their whole upper body. You can do it from the back, you can do it from the front, you can do it from the side. Another favorite is to grab it from the front and then pull the garment underneath their armpit. And now you're behind their arms, which is a great place to be, and you're controlling their whole upper body. I find this to be a lot of fun. If you get into the competitive jujitsu, they've got the very clear delineation of gi versus no gi. Some people really like the gi because they love the grabs, and they don't like the no gi because they don't have the gi to work with for a grabbing tool. It pays to know both of them, and it pays to be familiar with both of them. And we don't want to be surprised. And why would we want to give up, in a live situation, a tremendous tool because we don't train with it or we don't think about it? So give that some thought for the clothing and the garments. Those are, I think, a little bit easier to do in a dojo than the footwear. And the footwear, in my opinion, is extraordinarily important. As I started to learn about this years ago, about different tools that even require footwear, things you can do with good shoes on that you can't do either barefooted or with bad shoes. And I would say bad shoes are things like flip-flops, Crocs. If you want to survive an altercation, I would not even think about wearing flip-flops or Crocs or any of the other really handy little slip-on shoes. They're great for around the house, or for convenience, but and I know slip-on shoes are becoming more popular. Even a more dress casual shoe will often have a little kind of a hook on the back, so that you can slide your heel in really easy, rather than having to reach down and pull them on, so that they're snug. But when I tried these on, I just tried, well, what's the first self-defense thing that's good to know how to do, which is just take off. You take off running. Like, can you run? And you might have to either escape, or you might have to pursue somebody. With those slip-on shoes, first step, they popped right off. And I was running, with basically one shoe on, and then, but they come off way too easy. So if you do wear slip-on shoes or things like flip-flops, just realize running is not an option for you. It just won't. You're going to be barefoot, and then running barefoot is going to be extremely difficult. You can do it, but if you don't train to run barefoot, like a lot of the sub-Saharan Africans, they even compete barefoot. There's a couple of good legends of these guys running in marathons and competing and running barefoot, but they've conditioned their feet to do that. Your feet, if you want to try it, go give it a whirl and see how pleasant it is to try to run barefoot. You won't be able to cover ground very quickly, and you'll probably tear up the bottoms of your feet. But the footwear is really crucial for footwork. Anything and Aikido, if anything, is built on footwork. We have to be able to shift, pivot, turn. And because Aikido is so turn-based, turning is such an important factor. Think about when you're normally on the mat, you've got your bare feet. They can turn and pivot pretty easily. They're not very sticky. Works totally different in tennis shoes or in any kind of athletic shoes. Even dress shoes, if they get worn a little bit and they've got leather on the bottom, can grip concrete pavement, even a tile floor more than you think they would. And you do a pivot, and I can attest to this personally, you do a pivot and that foot that you're expecting to turn on the surface that you're standing on doesn't, you will twist your knee and you probably won't be able to keep going. And that's a self-induced injury. That's the last thing we want to do, is help our opponent or help our attacker by immobilizing ourselves through an injury just because we're not used to moving in the clothes that we wear on surfaces that we're on every day. So I'm sure a lot of you have played around with this. I know I did when I first learned Tenkan and pivoting and stuff. And I'd want to practice not just on the mat, but I would do it, in my normal shoes and be like, oh yeah, that's when I pivot on a floor that my shoes are sticking to, I got to lift my heel, and it's trickier. It's not the same. So it pays to use these tools in as close to a live world environment as we can. Being barefoot gives you a lot of freedom. And when you're wearing your shoes, when you're wearing your normal clothes, it feels different and it moves and your body moves different. Everything performs differently. So we don't want to be surprised by having to now kind of fight against our body or be clad in unfamiliar territory. So, and the tricky part is now you don't want to wear shoes on the mat because, you don't want to hurt the mat, your street shoes. You can go and just get a sport. I think they call them, what is it? Not a wrestling shoe, but it looks like a tennis shoe. Just get a shoe dedicated for wearing on the mat, because it's not the rubber that usually is the problem on the mats, the rubber surface versus the bottom of your feet. It's the rocks and little dirt and stuff that will act as an abrasive and start to wear through the mat surface. So if you have a pair of shoes, and of course, if you're in a dojo, make sure you ask one of your instructors or the owner if it's okay if you have shoes that are just dedicated, they'll only ever be on the mat, and get their permission. But it will be a big awakening to find, when you really start practicing, and not just a little bit of movement here and there like you would, as you're playing around by yourself, but I mean, with another person, with an uke, you're testing out your technique, you're going to find a big variance based on your footwear. And I know I've talked long ago about this on the influence of Savate, which was one of the arts I really love because of and I'm talking old school Savate, not modern competitive Savate, which is more like Taekwondo. But Savate came from 18th century France, basically, and it was a kind of like a street self-protection fighting art that sailors would use, sailors and thugs and that sort of thing, because it was brutally efficient, and it relied on what the footwear of the time was, which for people of that nature, which today we'd call like kind of blue collar and lower, like these were almost homeless street thugs up to dock workers and sailors and things. They didn't have a lot of money. They weren't the aristocracy that could afford, full leather soled shoes. Leather was very expensive at that time. So they would wear shoes that had a very hard sole, sometimes even made out of wood, often made out of wood. And you imagine a chunk of wood on the bottom of your foot, you hit somebody with that and it will cause a lot of damage. It's almost like brass knuckles only for your feet. And their art was built on basically kicking people with this hard piece of wood. And it, grew into a more elaborate art, but, in its original origins, it was very, very simple and straightforward, which is basically kick somebody in the shin or kneecap really hard. And then, as they double over, then you basically hit them. And the reason this was so powerful is that the legs are long. You can kick somebody at a much greater range than you can reach out and grab or hit somebody with your hands. And so it was like a first strike weapon. Because the kicks were not big and fancy, they could also be done at very short range. So if somebody's right in your face, you can just whack them in the shin, and that hurts. Anybody who's walked into a coffee table in the middle of the night knows that the shins there, and unless you're a Muay Thai kicker and you're out kicking banana trees all day and numbing, your shins, which very few people do that. Being kicked in the shin will really stop you, and much less the kneecap if you can get it that high. So, as I played around with this, and I really got to love the Kutapiba, I believe, is the shin kick. Pardon my French pronunciation. I don't speak French. Fantastic utility kick. When I started learning of that, it changed my shoe purchasing habits. Because there are, soft rubber soles, then there are hard rubber sole shoes, some that are a bit heavier, some that are real light. I liked having a surface that if I, did that kick on something hard, and you got to imagine somebody's shin is going to be hard. I don't want, my foot to take the brunt of it. I want the shoe to deliver the force. So, just a preference of mine, having shoes that don't pop off if you've got to run. I'm getting older too. Running, I'm not going to be doing a lot of running. I'm not going to outrun some guy half my age. That's just a ridiculous premise. Unless I've somehow made it so that he can't chase me, that he can't run, then I'll sort of trot away. But I'm not going to be doing an Olympic sprint competition trying to get away from trouble. That's not a tool that I can use. If you can do that, if you're in a great shape for running, got good cardio, your legs are strong to do that without twisting a knee, and God forbid you are sure-footed so that you don't fall, because if you fall, then you can be in real trouble. So try these different things out. If you're in a climate where you, like, say in the wintertime, you're wearing hats, even that, you reach up and grab somebody's stocking cap and pull it down over their face. Stuff like that is on the table as a possibility. Even, ball caps, you can grab a lid and just pull it down, and they're blind. Somebody's blinded for a moment. If you pull down and kind of push towards the chin, you can actually pull the head with it. So these are all tools that we can use. Also practice if you, for example, in the wintertime where it's cold and you're wearing gloves, to keep your hands warm, or mittens. Practice what it's like, using your hands when you've got gloves on, because it will be different. You don't have to go crazy and do, hours and hours and days and weeks and months of doing these garments, but give it a try. It will open your mind. It'll change what you assume your body will do and know, and you'll get up to speed very quickly. Those little adjustments that you need to accommodate for different types of clothing will come along faster than you think. But don't think that you can just imagine them and do them. Try it out. You want to get a feel for what it's like to, grab garments and be grabbed with your garments. It's kind of a new horizon, I guess. We often, as martial artists, we get stuck in the habits. We get to train, we get into our gis, we go out and we train, with other people, and you learn really fantastic fundamentals there. This is kind of like the icing on the cake. Is, all right, what are the adjustments I need and things I need to be careful of? If you wear a ball cap, know that somebody can reach out and grab it and pull your head with it. If you like to wear a hoodie, know that it's very easy to reach back, just like the back of that gi, only a hood on a hoodie is even bigger. It's like a giant bag hanging there, and it's easy to grab and pull that thing up over your head. Don't find that out by surprise when somebody actually does it to you and you're like, oh, what now? So play with it. I like doing a lot of play in my training, just because it's something it's fun to do. It is, when you do it properly, it is very informative. And, I know a lot of kind of old school trainers like, hey, you shouldn't be having fun in training. This is supposed to be hard. This is supposed to be, challenging and whatnot. And I guess to that point, I would say, look at how young animals train. They train through playing. They, whether you're looking at puppies or kittens or bear cubs or, anything like that, they're wrestling and tumbling around. They're not trying to kill each other. They're playing. And the reason they do it so often is it's kind of fun. They enjoy it, but they are learning the fundamentals of how to fight. You look at any animal in a real fight, they're doing almost exactly the same things, only just to a higher intensity level, but they learn all their fundamentals through play. So that's why at the end of my episodes, I always say, enjoy your training. Do what you do to enjoy it, although you are still learning. Make sure that the learning component's still there. And this is just a way to kind of play around with training, have some fun, do something a little different. Because that always keeps some spice in the training, is to do something that's not just the same pattern of what you always do. So just some food for thought until I do another podcast. It should be coming up here before too long, hopefully. I know the holidays are coming, but until then, enjoy your training.